Tolentino said he did it because a witch told him Dismukes was going to shoot him in the head. Tolentino was indicted on murder and felonious assault charges.
All right. Welcome back to Truth and Justice with Kelli Prather. I am still here at 660 Neve Street in lovely Lower East Price Hill at the No Love, the Lonely Stoner No Love store. You all just saw that amazing interview with Dewante No Love Hendricks, who is truly a staple in the community. Before I get back into why I support Dewante Landrum, I just want to say, the Black Women's Rally for Nan Whaley, gubernatorial candidate Nan Whaley, and Lieutenant Governor candidate Cheryl Stevens was amazing. When I tell you it was well attended, Black women from all over the region came out to support our future governor. Now I'm going to advocate for Governor Nan Whaley. Ohio is ready to be led by a woman. You know, everything about women have been tested for centuries. I was going to say for decades, but for centuries. Our right to vote, our right to make choices about our bodies, our right to love who we want to love. All of that is about women, and it's time that we take a stand. It will be amazing to have a white woman, quite frankly, a white woman as the governor and a Black woman as the lieutenant governor. I was just so excited to just stand there and to just be a part of that movement, the woman's movement. For too long, we've suffered, and we need to have people who represent our highest and best interests. It was also great to see Hamilton County Commissioner Stephanie Sumero Dumas in the building. Now, the amount of love that she received from the women in that room was confirmation that women want to reelect Stephanie Sumero Dumas. I say this, the Republicans got it right this time. Did you hear me? The Republicans got it right this time when they decided to support their candidate, to endorse their candidate. They decided that they didn't want to endorse someone who was kind of straddling the fence and calling themselves an independent. Now, what's interesting about that, let me just say, what's interesting about that is this morning on one of the other highly renowned talk shows, there was a lady who got on and she made a comment. She said, when you go to the polls, now I'm not pushing for either party or telling you who to vote for. Now, if I'm telling you who my picks are, like Stephanie Sumero Dumas and Nan Whaley and Cheryl Stevens, I'm going to just speak that out loud, and Kathy Ingram, but I'll talk about Kathy Ingram in just a minute. The caller into this radio show said that when you go to the polls, you vote Democrat. Vote Democrat because you know and you see how Republicans have done us and how they're going to continue to do us. And an independent ain't nothing but a Republican behind closed doors.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't Black.
Did you get that? An independent is nothing but a Republican behind closed doors. And so, that just resonated with my spirit, and I wanted to make sure that I put that out there. So, Stephanie Sumero Dumas, the one thing I always say is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. She is a stand-up woman. She served as, she was on the Forest Park City Council. At one point, don't misquote me. I don't want to misquote myself. I don't know if she was mayor of Forest Park, but I know she was a part of the city council for the city of Forest Park. And she's doing a good job. I've watched her take votes in office, and it wasn't that, she wasn't afraid to say yes. Her yes means yes and her no's mean no, and she didn't abstain for fear of not getting votes. And so I think that speaks volumes. I've also had opportunities to meet with the commissioner, Stephanie Sumero Dumas, Commissioner Stephanie Sumero Dumas, in her office. So anytime I've called on the commissioner, she has been present. And so the one thing, and I said this on my last podcast, I'm going to say it again. The one thing I want you all to remember as it relates to commissioner candidates, think about how city contracts have been monopolized, and think about how those contracts have been handled when you think about who you want to put in office for Hamilton County Commissioner. We don't need black faces. We don't need a black face for the development, for the monopoly of infrastructure dollars.
All across this country. I mean, we've seen a disinvestment in housing authorities.
Did you get that? I'm just going to make it plain. We have a candidate who recused himself. In 2016, he had recused himself over 40 times because it would have been a conflict of interest for him to take a vote on contracts that a family member would have received. You all heard me talking to the one and only DeWante No Love Hendricks about the West End. The West End has been totally gentrified, totally gentrified. People have been pushed out of the community like you would not believe.
These are obsolete buildings. They don't provide the kind of housing that people want for their families.
It was recently uncovered that the former West End Community Council had access to a bucket of money that it had been put away in a trust. And so one of the commissioner candidates recently removed it and made those funds accessible so that the former members of the West End Community Council could live off the interest. How unconscionable is that? And so these former community council members also made it easy for the FC Cincinnati developers to push into the community, and they voted on it, and they vilified anyone who took a stand for the properties on Bay Miller, the properties on Lynn Street, the properties on Oliver Street. I mean, when I tell you that citizens have been vilified, citizens have been terrified, citizens have been criminalized, it's been a living nightmare in the West End. And it's partially because one of the individuals who's running for Hamilton County Commissioner was on council. Now, let me take a deeper dive. This individual, ironically, although the Republican Party decided to endorse their man, this individual has been endorsed by Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Deters. Now, you all heard me say this. Although we were quarantined during the COVID-19 and the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, although we were quarantined and people couldn't even go outside. People, if we went out and were out after a certain time, we had to provide documentation to confirm why we were out that late. Ironically, the uptick in deaths did not stop during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ironically, the individual who is running for Hamilton County Commissioner was chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee at that time. And so it does not surprise me. It does not surprise me at all that the individual who's running for Hamilton County Commissioner is endorsed by the Hamilton County Prosecutor. What you all have also heard me say in the past is that as a social justice advocate, it was tearing at my heartstrings that the Department of Justice was not investigating these police killings. Shout out to Benjamin Crump and his team, including Teslin Figueroa, who, by the way, held an amazing nonpartisan political boot camp in Atlanta, Georgia, some weeks ago. But I read and I did my research. I did my due diligence. You all know that I'm a researcher. And I found out that under Donald Trump's watch, there was a 4-year hiatus on the investigation of police departments.
I'm thinking, what happens late at night when you make that call to 911 and there's nobody there? What do you do? Whether you're white, black, or anybody else, I mean, what do? You want to think the best, but you have some very violent people. And when they're breaking into your house at 12 o'clock in the evening and you're sitting there and you don't have a police force, they're actually talking about not having a police force. Well, that's not happening with us. We're going to have stronger police forces because that's what you need.
Did you get that? Under the watch of Donald J. Trump, the Department of Justice was halted on investigating corrupt police officers. And so when I look at the fact that during that time, the individual who's now running for Hamilton County Commissioner, he was also chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee. You have Hope Dudley, the amazing Hope Dudley, who had those cards made for Who Murdered My Son, to try to get tips about, some of these unsolved murders in this area. You have citizens like myself speaking up and speaking out about the fact that we're not getting justice. So it does not surprise me that Hamilton County prosecutor, the corruptest prosecutor, the one who has been in office since the West End was gentrified, since OTR was gentrified, since we've had murder after murder after murder of unarmed black men, and now, most recently, now you all know that I've been talking about my guy, Paris Dismukes, who had the ability to get messages out there through Busy One Entertainment, Four Shots Films, and Busy One Radio. And the fact that there's development taking place in Tri-County, it does not surprise me that the prosecutor in this case threw out the minor misdemeanor drug charge for this Filipino gentleman who is now on trial for murdering Paris Dismukes.
Court documents say Jan Tolentino stabbed Paris Dismukes in the neck after closing the BJ's Brewhouse in Springdale back in August. Tolentino said he did it because a witch told him Dismukes was going to shoot him in the head. Tolentino was indicted on murder and felonious assault charges.
It doesn't surprise me. And, when my nephew was in here, Devontae Boogie Hendricks, he also mentioned the fact that we need justice for Mick Landrum, the biker who was tragically, and thank God it wasn't fatally, he was tragically struck by a hit and run driver in the West End on his motorcycle. Now, there's cameras all over the place. A perfect example, and I mentioned this in one of the upcoming podcasts, is the shooting that happened on Main Street. The shooting that happened on Main Street, where there's cameras all up and down Main Street. They got those shooters really quick. Their faces are all plastered all over the news media, okay? And it was because of the establishment. It wasn't a black-owned establishment where that took place. It took place outside of an establishment where they have a mixed crowd, and it's, quite frankly, it's owned by someone outside of our community. So if they could work expeditiously and get that individual, why can't they find the person? Why can't they remove the cameras and find, who struck Mick? I mean, I remember years ago, I worked for a local grocer, and with those cameras, security cameras, you can hone in and get the serial number off of $1. So if I were a cashier and I wanted to take one of those dollars and put it in my pocket, they had the serial number for that particular dollar. So they can do the same thing. And so I say that to say this: there is corruption and collusion in local law enforcement. They pick and choose what cases they want to take. And I believe that we need to hold local officials, our elected officials, accountable. And in this case, the chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee, who was the chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee at the time that Mick was struck, he should be held accountable. We should not give him a pass because he got, members of the cloth, members of the faith-based community supporting him. He should not get a pass for that. He's not holier than thou, especially when we've seen how these developers, especially one of the developers who had one of the prime contracts for FC Cincinnati, now TQL Stadium, was one of his family members. He shouldn't get a pass. We need to keep that in the forefront of the news and help people to understand that people need to understand that elections have consequences. And if I can just be candid, a lot of the individuals who are who are pushing, who are backing, who are endorsing this individual and helping him to get into office, those are developers. Developers who he has made promises to get money that the small guy, like Kelli Prather, Dewante No Love Hendricks, the Avondale, individuals in the Avondale, would never have access to, because these contracts are monopolized by an individual who knows what's coming down the pipeline, and they've already designated a lot of the resources for it. It is unconscionable. It is a clear-cut, evidence-based show of corruption and collusion between city and county government. I'd say city, county, state, and federal government. They know what's coming down the pipeline. They already know who to give what to. And, you know, I just think it's time for us to take a stand. If you're not registered to vote, make sure you are registered to vote. My deadline to get you registered to vote is October 1st. I think they're saying it's October 10th. Joe Mallory, who is on the one of the chair members for the Hamilton County Democratic Party and the president of the NAACP, he posted the schedule, and I'll share that schedule for voting, early voting and whatnot. But if you're not registered to vote, get registered to vote and take a stand. Like they say, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. And we want to make sure that our voices are heard. This week is the week when the Congressional Black Caucus returned to Washington, D.C. We have some amazing legislators all over the country who are fighting for our rights. Those are members of Congress, they're state senators, there may be a few U.S. senators, but we need to work on getting more Black U.S. senators in office.